My name's Claire Kelly. I'm the Manager of Youth Programs at Mental Health First Aid Australia. I think that's a really good question because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about the reasons that people engage in self-injury. And when I go into community groups and sometimes school settings, the reasons that people tend to think that it's all about is really about manipulating, about seeking attention, about being a drama queen, something like that, whatever the language might be. I think it's important to realise that in the very small number of cases where a young person is actually trying to communicate something with their self-injury, it's because it's the only language that they have access to at the time. So in the INESI study, which is the study that I mentioned just a little earlier, the main reason given for engaging in self-injury was actually to cope with overwhelming feelings, and over half of the sample said that. Close to a third said that they engaged in self-injury as a way of punishing themselves. A very small number, less than 5%, said that they were trying to communicate something to someone else or trying to change somebody else's behaviour. But I think it's important to realise as well that if a young person is engaging in this sort of behaviour as a way of asking for help, that actually that is pretty dire. That is about a lack of other ways of asking for help, or help not having been successfully received in the past. So a young person knowing full well that if they display injuries or if they engage in the behaviour in a way that it draws attention to themselves, that they're going to get in trouble before they get any kind of help. So I really love everyone to, when they feel the urge to say that young person is just seeking attention, to actually say that young person needs attention, that young person is seeking a connection, that young person is using language that they have available to them. Let's see if we can get them better language and better coping skills. Young people who engage in non-suicidal self-injury are probably at higher risk of suicide, yes. However, it's not useful to think of it as a causal relationship. Young people who are distressed, who are experiencing extreme anxiety, who are depressed, there are other mental illnesses as well, of course, will seek coping strategies of whatever the kind they can find. So it might be, I've got this big ball of distress here and I cope with it by injuring myself. I cope with it by getting drunk, by using alcohol or other drugs. Or maybe those things don't work so well anymore and eventually suicide becomes the option. So we don't know how strong that relationship is, partly because it's very confusing the way that language has been used over time, and often self-harm refers to previous suicide attempts, and we certainly know that previous suicide attempts increase the risk of dying by suicide in the long term. But to exactly what degree specifically non-suicidal self-injury does, it's very hard to say, but it certainly is likely, at the very least, rather than saying that it increases the risk of suicide, probably more useful to say that young people who engage in self-injury are at greater risk of dying by suicide.